Welcome back YouTubers to my channel of an everyday life of an Aspie. If you follow me right now and you're new to my channel, I'm Aspie. I'm all about creating mental health and awareness, sharing my life stories with the special syndrome and the like, and creating some understanding and awareness on these general mental health topics versus just your normal everyday, health topics, regardless of what you're struggling, along with tips and advice, as well as just forms of encouragement here and there when I can find the time to share what's close to my heart. So it's been brought to my attention, obviously, that I'm trying to tidy up some of my loose ends as promised. Hopefully in the next probably week and a bit we'll be seeing some stuff about in the playlist about Narcissus versus basically psychopaths and all that, so that hopefully we can gain a better understanding and knowledge, because this is one of the ones that it's really close to my heart to share with you all, because obviously this does exist in relationships. However, be it in a relationship, boyfriend, girlfriend, or a husband, wife, versus basically maybe just a friend maybe. So that's why I'm here to hopefully today just give you guys clearer understanding from what I know of based on my life experiences, versus just hopefully giving you some maybe tips and advice along the way, as well as just my food afterthought of maybe some of the questions you guys may have. So follow on with me now so that we can understand each other. So this one's all about psychology of narcissism and understanding narcissism. So narcissism, basically from the dictionary as a noun, is an excessive interest in or admiration of oneself and one's physical appearance. The psychology part of it is extreme selfishness with a grandiose view of one's own talents and a craving for admiration as characterizing a personality trait. Psychoanalysis, however, is self-centredness arising from failure to distinguish the self from external objects, either in very young babies or as a feature of a mental disorder. I have already talked about the grandiose narcissism and the other narcissism earlier in the piece, so I'll clearly suggest to look into that. But moving on, narcissism is the pursuit of gratification from vanity or egotistic admiration of one's attributes. The term originated from the Greek mythology, where the young Narcissus fell in love with his own image reflected in a pool of water. Narcissism is a concept in a psychoanalytic theory, however, which was properly introduced by a person in 1914 by the name of Sigmund Freud, or it was an essay by Sigmund Freud. The American Psychiatric Association has had the classification of narcissistic personality disorder in its Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders since 1968, drawing on the historic concept of megalomania. Narcissism, however, is also considered as a social or cultural problem. It is a factor and a trait theory that has been used in various self-reports, inventories of personality, such as the Millen Clinical Multi-Axel Inventory. It is one of the three triadic personality traits, which the other two is in being of this is psychopathy and machiavellism. Except in the same sense of primary narcissism or healthy self-love, narcissism is usually considered a problem in a person's or group's relationship with self and others. Narcissism is not the same as egocentrism, though, to be in mind. The traits and signs to look out for in this is, even though life, a quote here is by Alexandra Lowen describing the existence of a narcissist is said to be, life is a stage, and when the curtain falls upon an act, it is finished and forgotten. The emptiness of such a life is beyond imagination. There has been 4 dimensions of narcissism as a personality trait variable that has been delineated, which are your leadership or authority, your superiority, arrogance. 3 is your self-absorption, self-admiration, and 4 is exploitiveness and entitlement. In the book written in 2012, basically, I can't remember what it is, I think it's called Power Hungry Narcissist, it has clearly suggested that narcissists typically display most and sometimes all of the following traits, and I'm illustrating to you all. 1, an obvious self-focus in interpersonal exchanges. 2, problems in sustaining satisfying relationships. 3, a lack of psychological awareness. 4, difficulty with empathy. 5, problems distinguishing the self from others. 6, hypersensitive to any insults or imagined insults. And the one above, what I've just said before, of the problems distinguishing the self from others, I'm going to talk more about how to set boundaries with no contact or what have you with a narcissist if need be, if the need arises, if you need to have help on that. Vulnerability to shame rather than guilt, haughty body language, flattery towards people who admire and affirm them, detesting those who don't, admiring them, pretending to be more important than they actually are, bragging subtly but persistently exaggerating their achievements, claiming to be an expert at many things in life, inability to view the world from the perspective of other people, denial of remorse and gratitude. These criteria, however, that I have been sharing with you has been characterized because they presume a knowledge of intention, for example, the phrase pretending to be. Behavior is observable, but intention isn't. Thus, clarification requires more needed to be tested before this can be asserted as a fact, especially considering some of these multiple explanations above could be made as to why such person will exhibit or show these type behaviors. There has been basically like the Hotchkiss 7 deadly sins of narcissism, and obviously they identified them as this. Number 1, shamelessness. Shame is the feeling that lurks beneath all unhealthy narcissism, and the inability to process shame in healthy ways. In other words, they basically need to go about showing ways of not being shameless, and that in some ways they just, as I said, think about themselves without any thought or intention of others around them. 2, magical thinking. Narcissists see themselves as perfect, using distortion and illusion, known as magical thinking. They also use projection to dump shame onto others, I should say. Number 3, for the deadly sins, are arrogance. A narcissist who is feeling deflated may reinflate their sense of self-importance by diminishing, debasing, or degrading somebody else. Number 4, envy. A narcissist may secure a sense of superiority in the face of other person's ability by just using contempt to minimize the other person or their achievements. Number 5 is entitlement. Narcissists hold unreasonable expectations of particularly favorable treatment and automatic compliance because they consider themselves special. Failure to comply is considered an attack on their own superiority level, and the perpetrator is considered as awkward or difficult person. Defiance of their will is a narcissistic injury that can trigger narcissistic rage later on. Exploitation can take many forms, but always involves the exploitation of others without regard for their feelings or interests. Often the other person is in a subservient position where resistance would be difficult or even possible. Sometimes the subservience isn't so much real as assumed though, however. Last but not least, bad boundaries. Narcissists don't recognize that they have boundaries and that others are separate and not extensions of themselves. Others either exist to meet their own needs, or meet their needs, or may as well not exist at all. Those who provide narcissistic supply to the narcissist are treated as if they are part of the narcissist and are expected to live up to those expectations. In the mind of a narcissist, though, however, just remember there is no boundary between self and others around them. There are other forms of narcissism, as I said before in one of my videos, which I'm going to clearly address right now in this, just to gain a better understanding. So they are as follows. Acquired situational narcissism, or ASN is abbreviated down to, is a form of narcissism that develops in late adolescence or adulthood, brought on by wealth, fame, and other trappings of celebrities, he said. It was coined by Robert B. Millman, professor of psychiatry at the Weill Cornell Medical College of Cornell University. ASN differs from conventional narcissism, however, in that it develops after childhood and is triggered and supported by the celebrity-obsessed society. Fans, assistants, and tabloid media all play into the idea that the person really is vastly more important than other people, triggering a narcissistic problem that might have been only a tendency or latent, and helping it to become a full-blown personality disorder. Millman says that what happens to celebrity is that they get so used to people looking at them that they stop looking back at other people. In its presentation and symptoms, it is indistinguishable from narcissistic personality disorder, differing only in its late onset and its support by a large number of others. The lack of social norms, however, as well as the controlling of people telling them how life really is, also makes these people believe they're invulnerable. So that the person with ASM may suffer from unstable relationships, substance abuse, and erratic behaviour. A famous fictional character with ASM is Norma Desmond, the main character of Sunset Boulevard. Codependency is another one. This one is a tendency to behave in overly passive or excessively caretaking ways that negatively impact one's relationships and quality of life. Narcissists are considered to be natural magnets for the codependent. Rappaport identifies codependence of narcissists as co-narcissists. Collective or group narcissism. Collective narcissism or group narcissism is a type of narcissism where an individual has inflated self-love of his or her own in-group, where an in-group is a group in which an individual is personally involved with. While the classic definition of narcissism focuses on the individual, collective narcissism, however, asserts that one can have a similar, excessively high opinion of a group and that a group can function as a narcissistic entity. Collective narcissism is related to ethnocentrism, primarily focusing on self-centredness at an ethnic or cultural level, while collective narcissism is extended to any type of in-group beyond just the cultures and ethnicities. Conversational narcissism is a term used by sociologist Charles Duber in his book Pursuit of Attention, Power and Ego in Everyday Life. Duber observed that the social support system in America, however, is relatively weak, and this will lead people to compete mightily for their own attention. In social situations, however, they tend to steer the conversation away from others and usually direct it towards themselves. Conversational narcissism is the key to manifestation of managing those who talk constantly about themselves, suggesting its persuasiveness in everyday life. What Duber describe this conversational narcissism as: it often occurs subtly rather than overtly because it is prudent to avoid being judged an egotist. Duber distinguished the shift response from the support response as in the following two hypothetical conversation fragments as follows. So let's begin this. John, I'm feeling really stuck. Mary, oh, I just say shift response is the first one. Now to listen to how it sounds when you do it in the reverse part of your support response. Again, John, I'm feeling really stuck. Mary, when was the last time you ate? Can you see the difference of what I've just mentioned on how to distinguish between these two type conversational narcissisms? Okay, another one is cultural narcissism. In the culture of narcissism, I should say, a guy named Christopher Lasch defines a narcissistic culture as one where activity and relationship is defined by the hedonistic need to acquire the symbols of wealth, this becoming the only expression of rigid yet covert social hierarchies. It is a culture where liberalism only exists insofar as it serves as a consumer society. Even in art, sex and religion do tend to lose their liberating power. In such a society of constant competition, however, moreover today than ever before, there can be no allies and little transparency. The threats to acquisitions of social symbols are so numerous, varied and frequently incomprehensible that defensiveness as well as competitiveness becomes a way of life for most of these type people. Any real sense of community is undermined or even destroyed to be replaced by virtual equivalents that strive unsuccessfully to synthesize a sense of community. A destructive narcissism is defined as the constant exhibition of numerous and intense characteristics, usually associated with the pathological narcissist, but having fewer characteristics than pathological narcissism. The malignant narcissism. This is a term that was first coined in a book by a person named Eric Fromm, I think it's pronounced as, which was written in 1964. They reckon that this to define it as a term of what for them was a syndrome consisting of a crossbreed of the narcissistic personality disorder, the antisocial personality disorder, as well as the paranoid traits shown. The malignant narcissist differs from one suffering from narcissistic personality disorder in that the malignant narcissist derives higher levels of psychological gratification from accomplishments over time, thus due to the worsening of the disorder. Because the malignant narcissist becomes more involved in the psychological gratification in the context of the right conditions, the narcissist is able to develop the antisocial, the paranoid, and the schizoid personality disorders that's clearly briefly mentioned. The term malignant, however, is added to the term of narcissist to indicate that individuals with this disorder have a powerful form of narcissism that has made them ill in the forms of paranoid and antisocial traits, as just briefly mentioned. Medical narcissism is a term coined by a guy named John Banger by the book called Medical Errors and Medical Narcissism. Banger defines this term medical narcissism as the need of health professionals to preserve their self-esteem, leading to the compromise of error disclosure to patients. In this book, he explores the psychological, ethical, and legal effects of medical errors, and to the extent to which a need is constantly asserted to their competence can cause otherwise capable and even exceptional professionals to fall into these traps of narcissistics. He claims that most health professionals, in fact, of any ilk, work on cultivating a self that exudes authority, control, knowledge, competence, and respectability. It's the narcissist in us all we dread appearing stupid or incompetent. In the workplace, for narcissists, I'm going to share briefly, or narcissism in the workplace, I should say, sorry. This, as a personality trait of narcissism, generally accessed with the narcissistic personality inventory, this has been related to some types of the behaviours in the workplace that, where we're working. For example, just to clearly illustrate to you all, individuals high on narcissism inventories are more likely to engage in counterproductive work behaviours, or CWB. I'm going to elaborate it down to you. This type of behaviour harms the organisation or other people in the workplace, however. Although individuals high on narcissism might engage in more aggressive and counterproductive behaviours, they mainly do so with their self-esteem is threatened. Thus, the narcissistic employers are more likely to engage in CWB when they feel threatened. Individuals on high narcissism have fragile self-esteem and are easily threatened. Once they found that employees who are high on narcissism are more likely to perceive that behaviours of others in the workplace as abusive and threatening than the individuals who are low on the low narcissism scale. The narcissistic manager, however, will have two main sources of narcissistic supply. Anonymate, which is status symbols like company cars, company issued smartphones, or prestigious offices, with windows viewing and with the animate kind of narcissistic supply to require. The difference here is flattery and attention from colleagues and subordinates. Teammates may find everyday offers of support swiftly turn them into enabling sources of permanent supply unless they are very careful to maintain proper boundaries. The need to protect such supply networks will prevent the narcissistic managers from taking objective decisions, while long-term strategies will be evaluated according to their potential for attention. This guy suggests. Gaining for the manager themselves. Organizational psychologist Alan Dowles wrote a book in 1997 that clearly describes that with corporate narcissism, that he himself explored high-profile corporate leaders such as Al Dunlap and Robert Allen, who he suggests literally have only one thing on their minds: profits. According to Downes, however, such a narrow focus actually may yield positive short-term benefits, but ultimately it drags individual employers as well as entire companies down. Alternative thinking is proposed, and some firms now utilising these type options are examined. Down theories are relevant to those suggested by Victor Hill in his book Corporate Narcissism and the Accounting Firms in Australia. Pyramidal narcissism. Ernst Simmel first defined this kind of term in 1944. Simmel's fundamental thesis is that the primitive stage of libidinal development is not the oral but the gastrointestinal one. Mouth and anus are merely to be considered as the terminal parts of this organic zone. Simmel terms the psychological condition of prenatal existence primordial narcissism. It is the vegetative stage of the pre-ego identical with ID. At this stage, there is a complete instinctual repose manifested in unconsciousness. Satiation of the gastrointestinal zone, the presumption of the instinct of self-preservation can bring back this complete instinctual repose, which under pathological conditions can become the aim of the instinct. Contrary to Lash, Muna Steigler argues in the book Acting Out that consumer capitalism is in fact destructive of what he calls primordial narcissism, without which it isn't possible to extend love to others. In other words, he is referring to the natural state of an infant as a fetus, and in its first few days of life, before it has learned that other people exist besides itself, and therefore cannot possibly be aware that they are human beings with feelings rather than having anything to do with their actual narcissism. Sexual narcissism. This has been described as an egocentric pattern of sexual behavior that involves an inflated sense of sexual ability and sexual entitlement. In addition, sexual narcissism is the erotic preoccupation of oneself or with oneself as a superb lover through a desire to merge sexually with a mirror image of themselves or oneself. Sexual narcissism is an intimacy dysfunction in which sexual exploits are pursued, generally in the form of extramarital affairs to overcompensate for low self-esteem and an ability to experience true intimacy. This behavioural pattern is believed to be more common in men than in women. It has been tied to domestic violence in men and sexual coercion in couples. Hilbert argues, though, however, that sex is a natural biological given and therefore can't be deemed as an addiction. He and his colleagues assert that any sexual addiction is nothing more than a misnomer for what is actually sexual narcissism or sexual compulsivity. While Hilbert writes mainly of sexual narcissism in men, in 2013, however, Scheinwerf, how do you pronounce it, describes what he calls gender narcissism, which occurs in both males and females who compensate for feelings of sexual inadequacy by becoming overly proud and obsessed with their masculinity or femininity. Narcissistic parents. This has been defined as, or has shown as, demand certain behaviours from their children because they see the children as extensions of themselves, and the need for the children to represent them in the world in ways that they meet their parents' emotional needs. This parenting style is most often resulting in some strained relationships with their children, coupled with feelings of resentment and self-destructive tendency. Last but not least is your narcissistic leadership. This is a quite common form of leadership, however. Narcissism may be healthy or destructive, or there is a continuation between the two. A study published in the journal Personality and the Social Psychology Bulletin suggests that when a group is without a leader, you can often count a narcissist to take charge. Researchers found that people who score high in narcissism tend to emerge as a group leader, however. Well, this quickly ends the psychologically of narcissism. Basically, give me the like for thumbs up for support, comment below, follow me on my social media sites, feel free to share these videos around, feel free to subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so, feel free to also turn on the notification bell so you can keep up to date with the new videos that's coming up. So enough to do, guys. Thanks for your support, thanks for watching, do what you love what you do. Until next time, Aspie signing out. Nova.